Photoshop Senior Edition, folks. The first thing we're going to work on is quite a bit different than anything else we've worked on so far. We're going to work on this blank box, and this is the way your layers should look if you've downloaded the image. You notice over here we've got a couple of file folders, and if you notice there's also a little arrow next to each one. So if you click on that little arrow, they open up and there are things inside, graphics and text and so forth. So we're going to have things already in there that I created for you. Now what we're going to do is use Vanishing Point to put text and graphics on this box. So this is going to be a box that a cell phone, a bogus cell phone from a bogus cell phone company, it's boxed up for sale. And there's there's information that's going to go on the side panel here that's also bogus, and so we're going to have a little fun, I hope. You're going to see something, like I say, it's a little bit different. I hope you enjoy it. And then we're going to get into some 3D in the next segment. But for right now, we're going to concern ourselves with Vanishing Point, which is up here under Filter. Right now it's grayed out because we're not on a layer that you can use Vanishing Point on. But this is where it's located. This is going to be the thing that we're primarily concerned with in this first segment. So if we click on layer 1, now you see Vanishing Point is there. So if I go ahead and click on it, and it kind of was out of the picture, so to speak, do a control minus here a few times and then you can see it better. If I just hit backspace, it goes away. That frame did. So we get a few controls here we're going to use, and this only works one way. There's not a couple of different ways to use this, like there's, most things in Photoshop have more than 2 or 3 ways to do, but this only works one way. So here's what we're going to start with. First of all, there's a couple of graphics. So if I'm going to pull the layers out of here so we can actually see them, drag this out. So let's work with the graphics, and there's a base graphic that we want to work with first, and this is just some gobbledygook here. Got to be on the right layer, Steve, that I made some time ago, and it's on its own layer now. It looks like it would go on the front of the box almost, but if you look at it and think about it, the graphic is faced towards you, the box is faced more towards the right. So we have to fix that. But it's just a bunch of goofy brush strokes, a couple of base colors to it, some smearing going on, and that's it. It's a background for this cell phone graphic. And the graphic, or the cell phone right now, is underneath that graphic. So here's the phone, and we're going to put it on top of this. And I can switch the layers, and notice right now it's bigger than the background graphic, so that doesn't work real well. But notice it too is facing out towards us. Wouldn't convince anybody that that goes on that box, right? So we're going to fix that, and if we go down here to this other little folder, we've got a few different things. We've got the text. This text here will go on the side of this box, and obviously if we do that, that won't convince anybody that that belongs there either. We have the text that's the name of the bogus company, and that doesn't work well there. So we've got to fix all these things, and here's the top of the box, and we're going to actually face the box top going back that direction. So we got to turn it around and make it look like it belongs on top. So we've got several things to do. We're going to put a drop shadow on this, but let's just make things a little more workable. The way we create the folders is easy enough. Let's just close these folders back up for now. Right here is the folder, and we can click on that. Notice this came up as group 1. That's because I named these other folders, or this would be group 1 and group 2. But this came up as group 1, and then we can just double click it and name it whatever we want. But it's a great way to store files inside, so we don't have long lists. For example, if I think I mentioned to everybody, I had an image a few years ago that had lots and lots of pieces of waterfall, and probably 40, 45, 50, maybe more pieces of waterfall to create a humongous set of waterfalls. And this is the way to group those things. You could say, you know, the south bottom waterfall would be in one group, and then you can have all of those pieces inside of one folder, because otherwise you just have a list of, you know, 50 to 100 waterfalls, and then you got to sift through those. And if you could put those in folders, you make your life so much easier. And if you double click on that, I'm sorry, you can right click on that, and you can give it a color designator, like you can make this orange, and we're just going to make that no color. I want to get rid of that group 1 folder, but you can see this is good for organization. And let's get started. Let's turn off the text here so that doesn't get in our way. I want to start by making a duplicate of the box, and just do a Control-J there. I'm going to turn that one off to make it hopefully less confusing. Let's go ahead and put a blank layer in, and I'm going to move that below this layer 2 because I want to go ahead and fill this with a color, and let's just make it white. I've got black and white, my default colors. If they're not yours, just hit the letter D as in dog on your keyboard and your default colors will come up. If black isn't on top, you can just hit the letter X as in X-ray and switch your colors back and forth with the X key. Now I'm going to fill this layer 2 with white. Now to do that, all I have to do is hold down the Control key and hit backspace, and that'll fill it with white. So now we've got a background. Control Z, meant to move. Turn on the move tool, just press the letter V as in victory, and we can move that over. You see this isn't completely lined up. The box isn't. I just created it kind of willy-nilly. We're going to put a drop shadow on the box to create some depth in the image. Okay, so we go down to the special effects, the FX button, and we just click on it and click drop shadow. And remember, we can come out inside and move that wherever we want to. It doesn't really matter because we're going to do something else with this anyway. We can make this a little bit darker if we want to. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK because I want to go over here to the FX that's on that layer and just right click on it and go down to where it says create layer. All the way down here, third from the bottom, create layer. and that gives me a copy of the drop shadow. It's gone from here now, and it dropped it here, and it also tells you this is layer 1 copy drop shadow. So what we can do now is transform that drop shadow. So Control T, but notice I'm on the wrong layer, so if I actually do anything, I'm transforming the box. So I'm just going to hit escape, and let's be prim and proper here, and let's just name this box and drop shadow. And background. I'm not a great typist anyway, but I broke my finger, and it's getting in the way. Got a splint on it. All right, so click back on the drop shadow and Control T, and hold down your Control key, and then you can just grab it and lay it down. Now line that bottom up a little bit and try to keep this edge here going straight across. Don't worry about this down here. We just want to make sure that this lines up going across straight, which would look normal with the box. And then just hit enter or double click inside there. If that doesn't look even to you, just hit escape, or sorry, Control Z to undo it, and then do a Control T again. Hold the Control key down, lay it down, scooch that over, move that up to where it looks like it should be. If the light were coming from this right side down, taking the top of the box into account, make sure that line is even, not sloped, going across here. Don't worry about this edge down here. We just want this to be straight, coming from this left edge and that going over there. We want this to look right. Then double click in the box or hit enter. All right. To take care of the drop shadow that's eking out from underneath, we just put a little square donut on that, a mask, and we turn on a brush, press the letter B, go ahead and put the opacity on 100%. Let's check the brush here. Let's go ahead and turn the hardness all the way up to where it's 0. I guess I should say down. And then we could just click, make sure that the mask is what we're painting on. And there we go. We've gotten rid of that. Now the drop shadow is pretty harsh. So notice that when we first created this drop shadow, that the fill up here automatically filled. I didn't do this. It just automatically for us changed the fill to 82%. Now, one of the questions that hasn't been asked by anybody yet, usually gets asked at some point, what's the difference between 82% fill and 82% opacity? Well, basically nothing. It's going to do the same thing on a regular layer. Fill and opacity change are really not going to have any effect. But if you're doing a blending or a style, some of the special things that are on the styles, if you have a fill, you change the fill on some of these little deals, like this one's got a lot of things, everything tweaked. the fill will change some things where the opacity will just turn everything off. The fill will just change certain things that are in the style. Okay, so on a regular layer, they will behave the same way. All right, so we've got our shadow, and we can certainly adjust that wherever we want. We need to go to blur and Gaussian blur and soften that. And let's see what layer we're on here. We're on the mask. We don't want to blur the mask, so filter, blur, Gaussian blur, maybe something in there, and let's just leave it there. We can come back to that if we want to blur it more, or if we need to mask it some more, but I think we're okay. We've got some depth there. Now let's go up and address some of the graphics. Let's look at the paint graphic here. Now what we need to do, we're just turning this on to copy that graphic. We're not placing that graphic at all. So all I need to do right now is turn this on. Then I'm going to do a Control A to select it, or I can just Control click on the graphic itself. I feel like, you see the marching ants inside. I don't like the feeling that I have there, like something's being omitted. So what I'm going to do instead is a Control A and then a Control C, and then I'm going to just turn the eyeball off so that's no longer visible. I have to go down to the layer that has the box. If I go anywhere else, or if I leave it up there, this will not work. So I'm on the box layer. I'm going to go to Filter, Vanishing Point, and if this big frame is in the way on your computer as well, just hit backspace or delete. Then we need to build a frame. So if the mesh here isn't selected, mesh, just click in the corners, as close to the corners as you can get. Doesn't have to be perfect. And now that we have the mesh there, we just simply do a Control V, V as in victory, to paste the graphic in there. Now that's going to translate into a huge graphic. So just let go, and then right down here is our transform tool. Notice we have the bounding box, which we're used to now. So we can resize this. Remember, we have to save name for the name of the company, whatever else we might want. It's up to you to decide how big the graphic should be, what it should look like, and all that. But notice now this graphic is facing the way the box is facing, right? Okay, so if you're satisfied, or when you're satisfied, just go ahead and go up the top right, click OK, and now the graphic is placed. Now remember, this is on the box, and you cannot now edit it. You can't move it around. It's there. The only choice you have at this point is an undo, or go to the history and back up, because it's there. It's finalized, basically. All right, now our next step is to go and get the phone, because we need to put the phone over the top of this painted graphic. So up to the phone graphic we go. We have to turn it on, and same thing with it. We do a Control A to select all, and Control C to copy it, turn it back off, go back down to the box layer, up to Filter, over to Vanishing Point, and we still have our mesh, just like it's a wire mesh, and we do a Control V as in victory, and again when we move the graphic in front, it turns it in the direction of the and face of the box. Again, we go to the transform tool and we resize it. Now if you hold down the shift key, it will keep perspective for you, so you can do that, or you can just free transform. Now you don't want to hide all the painting that's behind it, because that kind of sets it off. You just have to kind of decide how much of it you want. It is, after all, about a phone. So now you're thinking, maybe I should have made the background graphic huge. Well, perhaps. You can always cancel here and go back, right? You haven't gone very far, so click OK. And now that the camera is over the top, or the phone is over the top of the other graphic. And again, we can't move it around. It's part of the box now. So what about the text? Well, we can go ahead and turn that folder here, box graphics, we can turn that off so we get our real estate back, so to speak, and we don't get crowded. So let's go ahead and turn the text on. So now we have, here's the text that's the company name. So we do the same thing with it. Now notice the marching ants are already on, and we need to be on that layer because that's where the crayon graphic is. So all we do now is do a Control C, because everything was already selected with the marching ants. So we turn the eyeball off, go back to the box, and we go to Filter, Vanishing Point, and once again Control V as in victory, bring our text down, it pops right into place, and again we turn on the transform tool. We can make it any size we want. It does a pretty good job of keeping the quality in place, and click OK. Remember, got to watch the space between the left and the right sides, and it looks pretty nice. Alright, next we can turn the side box on. Marching ants are still going, so we can do a Control C. Turn the we got to be on the right layer. We're not on the right layer. Side box, got to be on side box. Control C to copy the text and turn that back off. Go back to the box layer and up to Vanishing Point. And now we need to get rid of that frame. Hit backspace, build a new frame right here. So click at these points, this one's a little trickier because we do need pretty much the exact space, and do a Control V as in victory, and there's our text. Now this one's a little wackier because it's a lot of text, and it's going to go really crazy when it gets in there. And so I'm going to tell you now, you can't, well, it's pretty hard to try to transform that once it gets inside this mesh box. So watch what happens and you'll see what I mean. It's just easier, I'm telling you now, it's just easier to work with this out here. But here we go. See what I mean? is now huge. So I'm going to bring it back out here, and I'm going to turn on the transform tools. And I'm just going to go and click it way down, bring it up, click it way down, same thing, until I can get it pretty small. Then I'm going to move it in. And if you don't see the bounding box handle on both sides, move it back out again and scrunch it in, because you need to be able to adjust left and right and top and bottom. It's not a big deal if if you really make it tiny like this. It's okay. You're not hurting the text any. Just get it in place and then stretch out your frame, and it's going to go exactly where it's supposed to go. And we can go over here, get that a little bit better, click OK. Now excuse me, you can't really tell from right here, but let's zoom in. See, you can read it. This phone is especially made for complaining. You can change the phone, and you can charge the phone and start your complaining as soon as possible. There doesn't have to be anyone on the other end. Just start talking and see what happens. And it just goes on and on. You might want to read this sometime. It tells them that they really need to get a carrier to hook their phone up to, and it has a list of bogus carriers. And it says down here at the very bottom, call this number if you don't see your favorite company listed, and then there is no company there. So, whoops, Control Z that. So let's make that smaller again. All right, our box is looking a lot better. Now, we've got one more text here. We've got the box top, and marching ants are still on. If we do a Control C, C as in cowboy, and turn that off, go back and click on the box, and then go up again to filter vanishing point, and now we need to make a selection out of this. So we just click on the wireframe up here and we can click back here and do a Control V as in victory. Now I know it's white on white, so you see the marching ants around it. Be sure and come down here and click on the transform tool. Then you have the bounding box. Now the first thing is we want the box top or top box or whatever it says to be facing that way. We don't want the box top or whatever to be facing out this way. So we're going to bring it down and we're going to turn it all the way around. Remember, the lines are going this way, so we're going to try to, and watch what happens. It's going to get giant again. So there we go. Now if you move your mouse outside, it turns into the double arrows, meaning we can turn it. So line it up with the ends, and if you expand the box, it's easier to get the alignment right, and then you can move it into place. And obviously that's too big, so we can readjust it once we're happy, and then try to get it lined up pretty good. And when you're happy, click OK. It looks like I could have done a little bit better job lining it up, but you get the idea. We could put a little smiley face or some kind of a logo that we come up with. That might be a good project for somebody here. I'm going to do that box top one more time because I really don't like the way that looks right now. So I'm going to do a Control Z, and I've already got it copied into the clipboard, and I'm already on the box, so all I have to do is go back to Filter, Vanishing Point, and make that, I'm going to hit Delete, and I'm going to make that mesh again, and it's not that painful to do this. Alright, Control V, and turn on the transform, move it down, spin it around, bring it over, spin it some more, try to line it up. I'm going to make it bigger. Let's see what that looks like. That looks okay. All right. Now we've got a box ready to put on the shelf for folks. Remember, we can come back here and put more of a blur on our drop shadow. We can drop the opacity of it if we want to. We can still transform it and lay it down some more if we want to do that. It's up to us what we want to do. We're in control. Turn these marching ants off, they're bugging me. This is something for you to practice, get comfortable with. It's not a place where you can use the transform tool so easily and make it look right. I've seen people do it, especially something like this. The text is going to look terrible if you transform it to, that much text and try to make it fit in there. It really will fall apart for the most part. It'll blur real bad. This text looks, pretty doggone good given the fact that it's been made fairly small and changed that much. That's just not bad at all. But if you're really wanting to put things in perspective correctly, Vanishing Point does a fantastic job of doing that for you. So practice this, get familiar with it, and let's get on to 3D for our next segment, shall we? Okay, we're going to move on into 3D. So let's just go up to File, New, and let's just make a document here, 3D Magic. And let's make this a low-res document. We don't need a huge file, and just click OK. I'm going to go ahead. I could have turned that into black at the beginning, should have, but let's just fill this with black now. Black is my foreground color. If it's not, black and white's not your color right now, just hit D as in dog on your keyboard, and once you do that, if you hold down your Alt key or Option key on a Mac and hit backspace, it will fill that with black. And now what we're going to do is put some text on here, and you can press the letter T for text, or go over to the letter T in the toolbar, and we're just going to put PS for Photoshop. And you can go up and choose any font you care to. Arial is what came up for me, and that's going to be fine for me. I'm going to make it a lot bigger, however, so I'm just going to go right here next to where the font size is, and this double T, and click and drag it to the right, because I want it to be really big. And commit. You can either commit there or the little checkbox that comes up over on the right hand side. Okay, that's good enough size. Now if I want to make sure it's in the middle, I can do a Control A to put the marching ants around the whole image. Make sure the move tool is on, and I can click here and then here. So the second one over and the second one over, and that centers it. Okay, turn the marching ants off, and I could stand for that to be a little bit bigger. Let's do a Control T, and let's just hold down the Shift key, and that's bigger, isn't it? Double click inside the bounding box or hit enter, and once again do a Control A, second one, Control D to turn off the marching ants. Now I think we're ready. Now we could scooch these letters a little closer together. If we double click on the T to select both of those, and we go up here to our little folder, remember this controls all kinds of things about our text. We can squeeze things and all that, so we can move things a little closer together. Just notice the arrows going left and right here, so we can squeeze those. And I just guessed at the number 25, so you can kind of experiment with that, make it the spacing you want it to be. So we'll make that go away, and we're going to have to recenter it. So commit, there's our other commit checkbox here. So Control A, and second one, there we go. Control D to turn off the marching ants. Now we're ready to do the 3D. So we go up to the 3D button on the main menu, and we're going to go to New 3D Extrusion from Selected Layer. Make sure you're on the text layer. And you're about to create a 3D layer. Would you like to switch to 3D Workspace? Yes, we would. So you're going to see a whole different look now, and you notice over here we've got a lot of things that just happen. We now have our layers, our channels, and we've got 3D over here in our tabs, and all of these things going on. A whole different look up here. And here are our main modes. So if the one it defaulted to right there, if we just go over to our PS, you can see that we can change the size right in here. And notice we're already somewhat extruded. You see a 3D shape. And if I switch to this one, we're sliding the text horizontally. This will allow us to roll the object. And this will spin the object and showing you the 3D effect. Very cool, right? Now, some years ago, Adobe made a 3D tool or a 3D software that I paid a pretty good chunk of money for, just so I could make 3D text. And then they turned around and they did away with it and put 3D inside Photoshop, which I kind of appreciated, but I in the meantime lost my software, so now I have it built right in. So you see there's all kinds of stuff that we can do. Notice here we have some presets. Some crazy presets too. And that was the first one. So get back out of there. The extrusion depth. So just because it extruded default wise when we first opened it doesn't mean that's as far as it will extrude. It will certainly go further. Again, you can roll this any way you want to. Lots of things for you to experiment with. I guess that's the main thing. If you look over here, you have a deform. There's lots of things here for you to play with. Filters, and certainly shading and all of these things to experiment with. So don't be shy, I guess is my theme. Okay, while we're in here, we can work on shine, reflection, roughness, so forth. I switched it over to infinite light, which turns this on, allowing us to change the direction that the light is coming from. It's certainly going to look a lot different given the text, the font style that you choose certainly is going to make a huge difference in what you have. Now let's say that we're done experimenting, and certainly there's so much more that we could have done. It's not funny. But let's just click on the new layer icon, and you notice those other things went away. So I'm going to move this down, and I'm going to say that we're done experimenting. Now, if I want, I can double click on this stuff right here and go right back into 3D. But let's just say I'm done. I like what I've got. I'm going to select both of these layers by holding down the Shift key. I click on both, and I'm going to do a Control E. So now there is no more 3D. No matter what I do, it's all just this one layer. And obviously it's pretty plain. I just basically extruded it a little bit, and that's all. So there's a lot more experimentation that we can do. So I'm going to do a Control Alt Z, Command Option Z on a Mac a few times here, and get back. And this time I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to go over here and click on the colors. And notice now my light's going to have some color in it. So I can build up my color, and now when I go over here, got this new layer in here. If I double click that, notice it just changed it to the color that I put in up here. So now I can really goof around and experiment too with that color. Now why I had to double click on the texture to get that to happen, I don't know. Could just be my computer. But notice as I move the infinite light around now, the color is also changing, making this far more interesting than it was a while ago. So now we can really experiment. Let's say we're happy with that. Let's tighten that up just a little bit. Now we can't really see a lot of the 3D. Just a little hint of it going on in there. So let's pop that again. And double click that a few times to make that all happen. Let's bring the light up a little bit on intensity. And you can change the light to spot. That didn't work too good, did it? Point? I don't know. There we go. Here's the point. And again, back to infinite. Get that back here. Now let's double click this again here. Now let's see what happens. So I think you can tell that we need to do some experimentation, number one, to really get to the heart of this. And see which one of these things we really like. So you can turn this thing on its side, and there's that wonderful wheel. You can load other extrusions. That's always good, right? Let's see what that's going to look like. So my suggestion, as always, is experiment, experiment, experiment. Have some fun in this. And again, you get the text the way you want it, you get the 3D effect the way you want it, and you don't want to see all of this 3D stuff again. Yes, you can click here and get away from it, and you start working with other layers. You don't see the 3D stuff, but when you click back on here, the 3D comes back. That means it's always editable, right? So that's really nothing to fear. It's a good thing to be able to edit this, okay, and to be able to turn. But if you don't want that anymore, you're positive that you're done with it, just shift click on a blank layer. You both, have both of these highlighted, and then you do a Control E. Then no more do you have the 3D hanging over your head, so to speak. And it is movable because it's on its own layer, and there's nothing else. It's the transparency. So you can put it wherever you want to. You can still do a Control T and move it around this way as well, and make it bigger if you want. Okay? That ends this segment of the tutorial. We're going to do a little creative collaging to wrap things up and talk to you all in a few minutes. Well, gang, this is the last segment. We're going to do some collaging, and we've got several elements that we're going to work with. I basically scanned in this song, Give Me Oil in My Lamp. So it's kind of the theme of this collage. And we're going to do some things with this to make it visually more interesting, I hope. I brought my layers out here so you could see everything a little bit better. I'm going to make a copy of this background. Just do a Control J so we have an exact copy. I'm going to go to the FX, Special Effects, and I'm going to do a pattern overlay. You can't see that. Move that up a little. Now it defaults to this mess. If we click right here, you got some gradients by default, but we've got the little gear and lots of other gradients are available to us, and we've got rock patterns, we've got texture fill, there's just all kinds of things, and whatever you just download or append is going to appear at the bottom. And we want something that has a kind of a crackle look and feel to it. Anything that has a pattern to it is not going to translate particularly well. Something like that wouldn't be bad. Something like this probably isn't going to do as well. So you just need to find something that's, and it doesn't matter if it's in color or not. Maybe we could find something that works even better. The trick is whatever makes you happy. I'm encouraging you to do what I did. Just find something, a song or hymn or whatever. It doesn't even have to be that. Just find something to use as a background image. And then, you know, work some magic on it to give it an older feel, an older look. These are going to be too big. You can kind of get the idea what that's going to look like. But all these things have a different look and feel to them. Nature patterns, I don't remember what that looks like. I'm just going to go with this. And you can load textures of your own as well. So just put in a new style, and we're going to click OK. And over here we see the pattern overlay has been applied, and obviously it's over the top, and if we reduce the opacity you can see that we've got that kind of a distressed look going now. We don't want it heavy, we just, you know, we want it in there, but we don't want it heavy. And I'm going to go ahead and make another copy of this as well. Let's put a new layer in here, and I'm going to put it just below that, and I'm going to do a Control E. So now let's see what we got. That didn't help us, did it? Let's see. What I need to do is select both of these at the same time and do a Control E. Nope. Still don't have what I'm looking for. I've got the distressed look, but it's banking on this. So now we've got it. All right. Let's do the old filter, render, lighting effects. And we will just bring that in here. Let's do a Control minus so we can see these a little bit better. We can move these around. Remember, we can stretch this out. We can bring these in. We can control how light and dark this is. We can change the color, how much of this lightness appears. And remember also, if we slide this slider down, if there's any texture, and let me bring this up, magnify it a little bit, Control plus. Let's see if we've got some texture that we can play with here. We don't want tons of that. It's playing off the texture that we created already. A little bit of that won't hurt. Let's click OK. Now we've got the layer below it, and remember, we can do a little bit of that. We can tweak that all we want to. I'm going to make a copy of that. I always feel better if I've got an extra one in case I really Control minus that so we can see the overall effect. Now it's a little bit more yellow here, a little bit less contrast there on this part because of the lighting effects. So I think we've got, we've got our little crackly effect going on, kind of nice effect. So let's say we've got that right where we want it. Okay. Now we've got our little flame here. Let me back up. Let me turn that off. Let's go to this oil lamp. So I want to bring this in to the image as well. I'm going to use another image that I've got from the Smoky Mountains, and this is what I want to use as our background. So I'm going to bring the song, the hymn, I'm going to bring this over and put it in that image. So I'm going to do a control, well, let's go ahead and flatten this, at least temporarily. We can always do a undo. So let's flatten this, Control A, Control C to copy it, and let's go over here to this image and do a Control V as in victory, and that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to transform it because I want it to fill in more of the area, but I'm just going to drop it there for now. I'm going to get my elements together, so to speak. So let's go over here and get the hurricane lamp, and I'm just going to make a general selection around that because there's no sense working any harder than we have to. So I'm going to do a Control C. There's no extra layers here, so I can just copy straight from here. And I'm going to come over here and do a Control V. So there's our hurricane lamp. And then I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. I want some of that glow, so I'm going to be generous with my selection. And again, there's no layers here. Control C. What I did, I just went around the house and took some pictures of some things that we had handy with my cell phone. And then I emailed them to myself. Make sure I get all the glow I need. Copy. And paste. So there's my glow that I got to put inside my lamp. So now, let's go back to the hymn. And I'm going to crop the image and turn all those off. And I want to crop the trees out for the most part. Use a little bit of them to help frame things. And I'm going to say that's fine. Don't want to belabor this too much. Let's go with the hymn. Control T. And let's go ahead and fill the frame with this hymn. Double click. Okay. And obviously we can change the opacity of that. Let's go up to the lamp. And we want to put a mask on here. So let's square donut it. And we're going to do the same thing with the flame. We're going to square donut it. Put the mask on. So let's turn the flame off for now. And we're going to zoom in on the hurricane lamp. And we're going to paint with black and white. If black and white aren't the default or aren't the colors that you see over there right now, just press the letter D as in dog. And if black isn't on top, just press X as in X-ray, and black will be on top. Adjust my size. I'm going to change my brush to be somewhat harder, so we take softness way down and then come inside here and start painting. I admit I am using my mouse to paint, and I should be at 100%, not 16%. That just means I have to go over it and over it and over it and over it. And that's not that much fun to do. So around the fingers. Whoa, went too far. And that isn't a big problem. When you've got a mask, I can't even tell you how many people that I've known over the years that always did this, pressing X to paint with white, go back over this and bring back some of that. Now do it again with black. Being careful just to get rid of the stuff I don't need. But I've known so many people that did this by erasing, using the eraser tool to go around this stuff. And if you aren't already aware, that permanently erases data. You don't get it back. With a mask, you can just paint it back in with white anytime you need to. That's the beauty of working with masks. Anybody should be, that's worth their salt using Photoshop, should be using masks. And I did that by painting to a certain place, stopping, coming down here, holding down Shift, and clicking. It just goes ahead and paints a straight line for you. Here we've got a curve, so that's not going to be helpful. Now the reason I can do so well painting with a mouse is that I have a very special mouse that I use. It's a weighted mouse. It was actually purchased for me by somebody else that uses a weighted mouse. And they're specially made for gaming. But then I found out how good it is for painting in Photoshop. Because normally things like this, I would use my graphics tablet with a pen. Because the mouse is so blocky and you kind of get shaky with them, and that's not the case with this particular mouse at all. Go in there, go a little bit small, zoom out, Control minus, get a bigger brush again. And believe me, if you've seen me in action at all, you know I'm not that steady. And I just went over that and made some disappear that shouldn't have been. So I'm switching to X. Switch, using X again, go right back. Now I am taking a little more time doing this on recording. I just want you to see that I do like to get the details. And I went too far again. The beauty of the mask. Let's press X. Press X again. Hopefully everybody that's watching this, by now you see that masks are essential to doing heavy lifting in Photoshop. Now I erase part of the hand, pressing X again, getting that back, press X again, fine tune that. Left bracket, get us, oops, switched, X again. And a little bit right there on the other side. And now we have hairy arms, so we're going to click on here and go back and soften the brush way up, because we don't want alien looking arms. A little bit too large of a brush there. So we won't completely zap all that. Same up here at the top. All right, we're in pretty good shape. Right here, this is kind of squared off. Left bracket key. And a softer brush helps us to round those things up a little bit better. This actually got cut off a little bit in the frame. It's hard to hold a lamp, I found out, and photograph it at the same time. All right, let's zoom out so we can see what we have. Now obviously this needs to go over to the edge of the frame. Probably need to can it just a little bit so we can straighten that up. Now the flame. How are we going to address the flame? Turn that on. Let's do a Control T. And we kind of need to put it over here so we can get an idea of how far it needs to go to straighten it up. Let's shrink it down a little bit more. Whoops. Control Z there. And let's hold down the Control key and kind of push this around a little bit. We want to make the flame a little broader and straighten it up a little bit as well. We're going to get rid of that base, so don't worry about the base. But a flame inside a lantern is a bit broader. It won't be that tall. Now, let's get about the business of masking that. So, click on the mask and B for the brush. And let's get the right brush size here and go to it. Now remember, we saved some of that glow area. Get rid of this. See that glow going on? We got rid of too much of it on the left. Press X and we'll bring some of that back. And let's move it down. V. Brush. X. Oops. Control Z. Press X again. I saw some stray. Control Z. Got too far in. And you can always switch to a larger brush. If you see some extraneous stuff out there, you can easily do that. Move it over a little bit more, and you can use your arrow keys to kind of fine tune that. Now, does that look like it belongs? Not really. So you can do that. That kind of helps. Here's what I like to do. Go to the lantern layer. Use your lasso tool. Go around this area here. Now you're selecting, but you're only selecting the lantern because there's nothing on that layer except the lantern. So we're only getting the globe and part of the metal here. Let's actually hold down the Alt or Option key on Macintosh, and we'll just get rid of the metal there. We don't need any of that stuff. Get rid of that. Okay. Make sure you've got your selection on the actual lamp, not on the mask, and do a Control J. Now this one needs to go up over the top of the flame. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put a mask on it. Actually, let's copy this mask right here, and let's just hold down the Control key and Alt key, Command Option on a Mac, and notice it turned into marching ants, and this just shove it up to that new created layer, and notice they automatically linked, and it masked that for us. Now what we're going to do is change the opacity of that. And I think that makes a more believable light, because it's actually under a copy of the globe. I could be wrong. The other way may be just as accurate if we drop the opacity. You have to be the judge of that. I don't know. Let's change the opacity. I'm just more comfortable with it being like that. All right. Actually, if you notice, the wick area of the globe or of the lamp is running this way, and our flame is running this way. So we really need to change the flame. So let's just do a Control T and see what kind of luck we have. Okay, so make sure you're on the right layer and not on the mask. Control T, hold down your Control or Command key and grab that middle handlebar on both sides and just swing it. Hit enter. Yeah, I think we're okay. We can live with that, can't we? Let's zoom out. Control minus. And we could Control T it and make it taller if we wanted to. Okay, now we can't see the forest for the trees, so to speak. So let's do a mask on the song, the hymn, and I like the idea of seeing the barn down there at the bottom. So I'm going to click on the brush. I'm going to set the opacity way down there. I want a really soft brush and a really large brush. So right bracket, and I'm just going to start clicking. That's a little too, there, 14%. So we can start bringing some of that back in. And it's up to you how much of this gets brought back. Remember, we're on the layer that has the song, the hymn. So if I click on the hurricane lamp and the flame, we're not making it go anywhere. I'm going to switch that with X and bring back some of this the hem down there at the bottom, switching to X again. Maybe make some of that go away. So give me oil in my lamp. Now this is not an overly difficult collage, but you know, these are all elements that I scanned or photographed, and I encourage you to do the same. I now have my hand floating out over the image. Let's just grab all of these things. Let's shift and click on each of these images and then bring that back over here. Now, we could put a drop shadow behind the lamp and everything, but we can also create a blank layer, put it under all of that, and just turn on black. So just hit X because black and white are already there, and turn on the paintbrush. Now 14% is already selected there. We don't need much more than that. Make my brush smaller. Now we're underneath the hurricane lamp, so we can just paint like that to give it a little bit of drop shadow. Now if that lamp is really lit, is that going to have a shadow up there? Probably not. But since that's up there on its own layer, we can put a mask on there, paint with black, and let's up this, and we can get rid of that off of there, and we can actually lighten that area if we want to. So let's go ahead and go up here at the top, and I had to switch to the photography workspace up here so I could get all my nice adjustment layers. I'm going to click on the brightness control and I want it to be on the hem. So I'm going to click on the brightness control and bring that up quite a bit. And the contrast doesn't need to be adjusted. So I lit it up pretty good. I'm going to fill this with black, and I do that by just simply holding down the Alt or Option key and hitting backspace. And I'm going to paint with white to open this up so we can see that light filter, the effects of it. Let's make that a bit bigger. The fact that that is brightening things up right there. And let's, my shadow here, let's diminish that shadow because that's really pretty heavy. So let's kind of take some of that away. Not quite so quickly. Control Z that. There. So now we have some more of that looking pretty good. Let's take some more of this away so we can see the. Yeah, I think we've covered the bases pretty good. So hopefully this gives you an idea on how to be creative with collaging. A lot of information in the whole segments that we've had in this lesson. We may spend some real quality time going over this. I hope that you find this to be a lot of fun and something worth playing with. See what you can come up with on your own. Talk to you all later. Have fun with this and get psyched up and into it. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.